Hey everyone, it's Robin here, and this video is going to be my early mid-game guide for set 8. I'm going to be going over every single 1, 2, and 3 cost unit and kind of talking about what kind of boards you're going to be building with that unit, so you guys can have a decent understanding of, you know, what units to prioritize depending on your early stage 1, stage 2 shops. Alright, well, let's just get right into it. Number 1, we have ASHE. ASHE's traits, Laser Core, Recon. ASHE is probably one of the best AD item holders in the game. When you have AD items, definitely look to pick up the ASHE for sure. Items that are good on ASHE, probably like, you know, Ginsu, Runan, DB. Any attack speed or AD item is usually good on ASHE. You do want to be looking out for the RENEKTON. RENEKTON's a really strong early game unit. Also gives you the 2 out of 3 Laser Core. Because RENEKTON's a brawler, you can you want to also look out for any other brawlers. So you want to look out for BLITZCRANK, and you want to look out for Vi, and also Lee Sin. It's really easy to get 2 brawlers. ASHE is a backline unit, so you do want to fill up your board with frontline units. ASHE is also Recon. You can also pair a Recon with ASHE. The easiest Recon to get is probably EZREAL, and then the other Recons you can get is going to be VAYNE or KAYLE. So definitely look to pick up these units. If you're playing around ASHE, you're probably just playing around brawlers and Recon. You can also, let's say we're playing RENEKTON and Blitz. This is probably the most common board you're gonna get. It's gonna be Blitz, RENEKTON, and EZREAL. And then level 5, you can probably tech in a Laser Core like YASUO. Recon is not really that needed, so you can also just play YASUO at level 4. Level 5, if you don't hit a Recon, you can play any duelist like FIORA to activate duelist with YASUO. You can play like KAYLE, you can play GP, you can play whatever. Next up, we have BLITZCRANK. If you're playing around BLITZCRANK, you are going to be picking up the other brawlers, as I mentioned before, RENEKTON, Vi, and Lee Sin. BLITZCRANK is also an admin, so the early admins you can get in, it's going to be CAMILLE or LEBLANC. You can usually, if you're playing around BLITZCRANK and you have a CAMILLE in your shop, you can usually just put in the CAMILLE, check what admin is. If the admin is like really good, then you can look to play CAMILLE, even though like CAMILLE is like not that good though. LeBlanc's definitely way better. So usually if the admin's like not worth playing, you're not even gonna play admin. If you do get a LeBlanc though, you can definitely play around LeBlanc with Spellslinger. Play a brawler with the Blitz, and you can play like a Spellslinger like you know, Annie or like a Lux with LeBlanc. And yeah, BLITZCRANK is just a generic frontline, so you can play Blitz with like any backliner. You can play Blitz with like a Lux, with AP backline, with LULU, with duelists, KAYLE plus whatever. So Blitz is actually super flex. Next up, we have GALIO. GALIO is probably at this point is probably one of the strongest early game champions. His tags are insane. You get automatic 1 civilian, and then mascots are really good early game. So GALIO, the early game mascot you want to pair it with is probably NASUS. In a lot of games, you're going to have GALIO 2, NASUS 2, and it's a really strong opener. Besides NASUS, the other mascots are going to be, I think it's MALPHITE and then YUUMI. There's also ALISTAR. So it's actually not that hard to get 2 mascot in. So that's why GALIO is so good. You can pair GALIO is also civilian. You can pair GALIO with a SIVIR, and you get 2 civilian, which is really strong. GALIO is a frontline tank, so you can just pair GALIO plus 1 mascot with any backliners. So you can pair it with ASHE, as we said before, like the ASHE EZREAL Recon. You can pair it with like Lux, holding AP items. You can pair it with LULU plus YUUMI, like maybe Heart. YUUMI is also a mascot, so you can pair it with this AP items. You can pair it with KAYLE plus GP. You can pair it with anything. So GALIO is like super flex. Next up, we have GP. GP is a pretty good item holder for AP items. And if you're playing GP, a lot of times you just pair it with KAYLE or something to get the 2 duelists. And then these are kind of like your carry units, so you want to get like frontliners. So pair it with like a Blitz RENEKTON, or pair it with like a GALIO NASUS. You can also play vertical duelist. You can get in like a FIORA, a YASUO, and you can get in 4 duelists, which is pretty strong early game. If you happen to get like a VAYNE orb, you can play VAYNE over like KAYLE, and it's probably a little bit stronger. Next up, we have KAYLE. KAYLE is duelist and underground. So if you're playing around KAYLE, you're gonna be it's gonna be probably very similar to GP. You probably just pair it with 2 duelists plus frontline, Blitz plus RENEKTON, or defenders Poppy plus Wukong, something like this. But the other trait, KAYLE is also an underground, so definitely look out for the Vi, EZREAL, or SONA. Getting in 3 underground really early in stage 2 is pretty important. It's pretty good. Next up, we have LULU. LULU is an AP item holder, so you can go ahead and put AP items on her, like Archangels, Blue Buff, Shojin, whatever. She's also a Gadgeteen, and LULU, you can play the Gadgeteen opener with LULU, probably one of the strongest openers in the game. So definitely look out for Annie, and then definitely look out for the Poppy. So this is going to be like the generic Gadgeteen opener. If you hit Annie, because you're playing Poppy, you probably want to play Defender. So you look out for the Wukong or RELL. Usually I play this board a lot. It's gonna be Annie, Poppy plus RELL plus Lulu, Gadgettine. And then the level 5, level 6 is very, very flex. You can play a YUUMI, it gives you heart, and then you can play, you can play a Star Guardian, like Lux, and you get 3 Star Guardian in. Once you hit Zoe, you can go ahead and drop like the Lulu. Usually you drop the Lulu and you play Zoe. You keep the Gadgettine, but it's a way better unit. You can drop like Lux and play like LeBlanc. You get the Hacker, Spellslinger. So it's pretty flex, but we're kind of deviating from Lulu here. But besides the Gadgettine opener, you can just play Lulu as a generic backline AP item holder. So let's say you hit Brawler instead of Defenders. You can just play like a Renekton. You can just play, let's say, a Vi, Blitzcrank, and you can just hold AP items on Lulu. Next up, we have Lux. Lux is also kind of similar to Lulu. She is a AP item holder, a backline unit. So pair Lux with any frontliners, Wukong, Poppy, something like this. If you hit RELL, you can play RELL over Wukong, and then you're 2 out of 3 Star Guardian. You can fit any Star Guardian in, like YUUMI, NILAH if you hit, whatever, and just item hold Lux. It's a really easy transition into AP, like MF or Talia late game. Lux usually just goes into the Gadgettine opener because you're looking for Spellslinger like Annie, and if you're playing Annie, you might as well just go for Gadgettine. So get the Lulu and Poppy in. Next up, we have NASUS. NASUS is a mascot anima squad. So NASUS, you're most likely going to be pairing it with GALIO. So if you have NASUS, definitely look out for the GALIO. You get 2 mascot, which is really, really strong early game. And then NASUS is just a good item holder. He's like an off tank. So he holds tank items okay, but he also holds AD items pretty well. Items such as BT, Runons, Deathblade, whatever. So he's like a melee carry. What you can do with NASUS is GALIO is going to be your main tank. You can get like more frontline in, like Poppy plus Wukong, get some defenders in to buff your whole team. And then NASUS will be your carry. You can also just play more backliners like SIVIR to get 2 civilian in. You can play maybe like a sure shot like SIVIR plus SENNA, something like that. Or you can play ASHE Recon, ASHE plus EZREAL, whatever. And then NASUS will be your off carry. And NASUS's other trait is Anima Squad. I find myself rarely playing Anima Squad because in order to play Anima Squad, you do need to hit, you are going to be playing SYLAS, JINX. Probably like this to get Anima Squad in. I do think this is a little bit awkward because SYLAS is like another like kind of like a tank, but then you're already probably playing GALIO already, so then it feels kind of weird. But if you do end up hitting like a JINX and SYLAS, you can definitely start playing early game Anima Squad and start stacking up the Anima Squad stacks, and then look to play an Anima Squad late game around MF. The other units that you can hit for Anima Squad is going to be VAYNE and RIVEN. This Anima Squad opener definitely gets way better if you do hit RIVEN or VAYNE, especially RIVEN. You can drop this useless SYLAS and play around RIVEN's Defender Brawler trait, which is way better. But other than that, normally with NASUS, you're just playing around GALIO and then any backline or frontline, other upgraded units that you can get. Next up, we have Poppy. Poppy is a defender. So if you have an upgraded Poppy, look out for the 2 defenders. It's going to be Wukong and RELL. If you do high roll, you can also probably get a RIVEN in. But other than that, Poppy is also a Gadgettine. So as we talked about before, you do want to look out for the other Gadgettine units like Lulu and Annie. I play this opener a lot. You can just, this level 4, 5, 6, you can just build upon it. Once you hit Zoe, you can drop Lulu for Zoe. And then the next level, you can play LeBlanc. If you hit a LeBlanc, LeBlanc gives you Spellslinger and Hacker. You can play a RELL instead of Wukong, which is usually what you're playing. And then a lot of times you can play a Lux here for Spellslinger. And then you can play a YUUMI for 3 Star Guardian, something like that. But the core around this opener is just going to be 3 Gadgettine plus Defender. And you just add whoever you can. Next up, we have Renekton. Renekton's a really strong right now. He is a tank. He is an off tank. He can also carry like 80 items. But with Renekton, it's a brawler. So same with other brawlers. Look for the other brawlers: BLITZCRANK, Vi, Lee Sin. And then he's also Laser Core. So it's going to be the same opener that we mentioned before, ASHE plus YASUO, to look up for the 3 Laser Core. But you don't need to play Laser Core. Like, don't go for the traits. I think the only trait you need to go for Renekton is just 2 brawler, and then you just play whatever backline, right? So ASHE, EZREAL, LULU, YUUMI, Duelists, KAYLE, VAYNE, whatever. Random VEL'KOZ maybe. Who cares? Sure Shot, SENNA, SIVIR, whatever. So once you have Renekton and the frontline established, just look for damage units. Next up, we have SYLAS. SYLAS is a little bit weird. I find myself like rarely playing this unit because his trait is both 3 traits, Anima Squad and Renegade, and they're both pretty hard to get early game. Like if you do want to play Anima Squad, like let's say you have a SYLAS 2 and you get it dropped a Riven or VAYNE orb, definitely look to keep it. You can get in 3 Ammo Squad pretty easily. SYLAS's other trait is going to be Renegade. The only way you can get Renegade in is if you hit like a Camille. So you need to hit Camille and you need to hit Talon in order to get 3 Renegade. Because the next Renegade is going to be a 4-cost Viego, so it's really, really hard. So I find myself rarely playing this opener unless I get like a Renegade heart. But if you do want to play this opener, if you do get a Camille, you can play 3 Renegade. It's pretty strong. SYLAS will be your tank. Talon will be your AP item holder. Camille can hold AD items. And you can just get an admin in, like BLITZCRANK, and find out what the admin is, probably. And then you can, once you hit BLITZCRANK in, you can play like a RENEKTON for Brawler or something. SYLAS is just a tank, so you can just play a traitless SYLAS, have it hold like a tank item like Warmogs or something, and then play backline units. Next up, we have Talon, another Renegade unit. Talon's traits are also kind of weird. Hard to get 3 Renegade in, as we mentioned before. But it should be the same thing. SYLAS, Camille. If you don't want Renegade in, you know, you can play like an early Ox Force, play an Annie for Ox Force. You can also play an ALISTAR for Ox Force. But usually you can just play a traitless Talon and have it hold like AP items if you need to. Talon can snipe backline, so a lot of times he can kill a unit or 2 for you, even though you're going to lose the fight. Next up, we have Wukong. Wukong is a defender similar to Poppy, except he does not have the Gadgeting trait, so he's a little bit worse than Poppy. But you're just going to be looking for the defender to buff your whole team. So Poppy or RELL here. Or Riven. He is also Mecha Prime. Mecha Prime is pretty hard to get early game because you do need to hit DRAVEN and you need to hit Jax to get Mecha Prime. So like it's gonna be very, very rare that you hit it. But if you do have an upgraded Wukong and you hit a Jax from Orb, definitely keep the Jax. Try to hit the DRAVEN for the 3 Mecha Prime. All right, that's it for the 1-cost units. Now we're gonna move on to the 2-cost units. Annie. So Annie is a Gadgeting Oxforce Spellslinger. Annie is core to the Gadgeting opener. Because once you hit Annie, it's really, really easy to hit Gadgeting because all you need to hit is Lulu and Poppy. And then you have 3 Gadgeting. So Annie is a pretty good unit. I would definitely keep, if you have AP items, definitely keep Annie because Annie is basically the core of most of the AP openers. Annie is also Spellslinger. So you can just play around Lux and Annie like this and play more frontline or backline. You can maybe get 4 Spellslinger in, but you need to get LeBlanc or Sona from Orbs. And then you can get 4 Spellslinger, which is really, really strong early game. Next up, we have Camille. This unit, Camille's traits, it's just like any other Renegade. It's really hard to get in, so we don't prio this unit that much. Talon and SYLAS for Renegade, and then but the thing is, Camille is one half admin, so it allows you to check admin really early, which is kind of valuable to buy Camille, check the admin, and just sell it. So look out for the BLITZCRANK and look out for the LeBlanc for to check the admin. But usually, Camille is not even worth playing for the 2 admin. Unless you have like a BLITZCRANK 2 or something and admin buffs BLITZCRANK or something. But a lot of times you're just playing Camille for 2 admin if you're already playing around BLITZCRANK. Just at like level 4 or level 5 and you don't know what to play. Next up we have DRAVEN. DRAVEN is a ace and Mecha Prime. I find myself rarely playing DRAVEN. I think DRAVEN can hold 80 items and as an ace can hold it decently well. But it's very, very hard to get Mecha Prime in. You know, there are instances where you get a Wukong and Jax. And then you can play like a Riven for Brawler and Defender, and you have the perfect like setup for Mecha Prime, and you can just buff DRAVEN here and Mecha Prime. But I think Mecha Priming stage 2 is kind of sus because you're losing 2 units at stage 2, which is really valuable. But a lot of times you can play DRAVEN with any frontliners like BLITZCRANK and Vi, and if you didn't hit like the ASHE 2 or any if you didn't hit the ASHE 2 or like VAYNE or something, you can hold DRAVEN with 80 items like DB Runons. And then DRAVEN can be your item holder until you find someone else better. Next up, we have EZREAL. EZREAL is a really good AP item holder. So you can just hold EZREAL like with AP items with no traits, and it should be fine. You can get a recon in with ASHE, Kai'Sa, or VAYNE to buff EZREAL's damage a little bit. EZREAL is also a underground, so once you hit EZREAL, definitely look out for the KAYLE and the Vi and the SONA to try to get underground in. But EZREAL can just be a traitless item holder and play just frontline units. Let's do Galio plus, you know, ALISTAR, or we can do defenders like Poppy, Wukong, or we can do brawlers like RENEKTON, Lee Sin. Next up we have FIORA. FIORA is a duelist Ox Force. FIORA's usually you just play FIORA with the duelist opener. Like let's say you have a KAYLE 2. Look out for the FIORA because FIORA is kind of like a tank. So if you want to activate duelist and you need frontline, get the FIORA. If you have like a VAYNE, if you're playing around a VAYNE, you can play the FIORA as your frontliner. You can play an Ox Force to make FIORA even more tankier with the Annie or the ALISTAR. You can play vertical duelist like we mentioned before with the YASUO plus GP or KAYLE. The vertical duelist is actually not that hard to get. because there's 2 1-cost duelists and there's 2 2-cost duelists and there's also 3-cost duelists. There's VAYNE and also NILAH. So getting 4 duelists in early game is actually not that difficult. FIORA, she can hold tank items and AD items. So FIORA is pretty flexible. Next up, we have JINX. I think JINX is really is pretty good as a traitless unit. Her traits are whatever in stage 2, but you can just have her hold like AP items and JINX will be pretty good. So she's Anima Squad and Prankster. As we said before, you can try to, if you have a JINX, if you get a JINX from Orb, you can try to play the Anima Squad opener with NASUS and SYLAS like this. If you hit a Riven from Orb, it's infinitely better because you can get in a Bruiser, a Brawler, or a Defender, and your front line would be way better. The other trait for JINX is going to be Prankster. The only way to get Prankster is to get a Zoe. So it's going to be pretty hard, but if you do hit a JINX and if you do hit a Zoe from Orb, definitely look out for the JINX. And then Prankster is super strong stage 2. You get a free target dummy, and it's like an Edge of Night, so it's kind of good. Next up, we have Lee Sin. Lee Sin is basically, I just treat Lee Sin as like a brawler early game. So just pair Lee Sin with any other brawlers, BLITZCRANK, RENEKTON, Vi. Lee Sin also has the Heart, so you can play... Heart is actually pretty good at stage 2 because the fights are kind of slow. So you can definitely play like a LULU with Lee Sin to get Heart going and just play brawlers. Something like this. And it just expand on that. You know, if you're playing BLITZCRANK, you can play admin. You can play 4 brawlers for more stall with Heart. You know, if you do high roll a SONA, you can play like 4 Heart, 2 brawler, which is pretty strong early game. You know, but if you have an upgraded GP, you know, you might as well just put in the MALPHITE to get 3 supers. It's like a damage increase, so it's actually not that bad. Speaking of MALPHITE, next up is MALPHITE. MALPHITE is also a super, so similar to Lee Sin and GP, you can play the 3 supers to get some damage buff. MALPHITE is also a mascot, so you can pair this with GALIO, NASUS, you know, any other mascot, YUUMI, ALISTAR. And it's actually pretty strong. Mascot's really strong stage 2, so definitely look out for that. Because MALPHITE is a mascot, he's like a little bit better. MALPHITE is like a tank, so just put tank items on MALPHITE. RELL, similar to every other defender, just a frontline unit. Look out for the defenders, Wukong, Poppy, Riven. And RELL is also a Star Guardian. So RELL actually, if you do want to get 3 Star Guardian in, I think RELL is really crucial because you do need the frontline, right? So usually the Star Guardian is going to be like Lux, RELL, Poppy, and then like YUUMI, KAYLE, or NILAH. Next up, we have SIVIR. So SIVIR is a civilian sure shot, but because SIVIR is a civilian, you can pair SIVIR in like every comp. If you just want to get mana gen, you just put SIVIR in the back, and SIVIR can also heal your team. So she's actually pretty good. It's really hard to get sure shot early game because you do need to hit a SIVIR and you need to hit a SENNA. It's the only early game sure shot in the game. So, but if you do hit the SENNA and SIVIR, it's pretty strong early game. You can just stack 80 items on SENNA. It's probably better than SIVIR. But yeah, SIVIR, just play with any board. The most common one is going to be GALIO plus Poppy plus NASUS. So you get 2 civilian. You can even not play GALIO NASUS and just play any frontline with SIVIR, RENEKTON, Lee Sin, something like that. Brawler, defender, mascot. We already know by now. Next up, we have Vi. Vi is a 3 trait unit. Very good early game. You can get an early game Aegis with ALISTAR and Vi. But usually early game Aegis doesn't really do that much. But Vi is a brawler, so just pair it with any other generic brawlers, BLITZCRANK, RENEKTON, whatever. Vi is also an underground. So if you hit Vi, look out for the KAYLE, EZREAL, and SONA. Next up, we have YASUO. YASUO is a duelist laser core. If you hit a YASUO, it's very easy to get laser core in because all you need to do is hit ASHE or RENEKTON, and you have 3 laser core, which is pretty strong stage 2. YASUO can also be paired with any duelist, so you can play 2 duelists or 4 duelists. YASUO is actually an AP item holder, so you can YASUO can hold AP items. YASUO can also kind of hold tank items because he's kind of like an off tank. And the good thing about YASUO is I realized that you can also hold AD items like Deathblade or Runehouse or whatever, because YASUO is a duelist, so you can play vertical duelist, and YASUO actually auto attacks a lot, so YASUO can actually also hold AD items. Next up, we have YUUMI. YUUMI is a Heart mascot Star Guardian, also a 3 trait, very good. She can hold AP items really well. She has single target DPS, so she can kill units for you. But with YUUMI, you usually want to pair YUUMI with at least 1 Heart. Lee Sin is probably the best because you get frontline as well. If you don't hit Lee Sin, you can play LULU with YUUMI and then play whatever frontline. Let's say you can play defenders, Poppy plus RELL, something like this. And if you're playing LULU and Poppy, you might as well just get a Gadgettine in with Annie, something like that. So YUUMI is very commonly played in the Gadgettine opener, but just treat YUUMI as a backline unit and play whatever frontline you can get. So you can just play, yeah, definitely look out for the GALIO for a 2 mascot. You know, let's get brawlers in, BLITZCRANK, RENEKTON. Like this board is fine, right? You can also get 4 mascot in, which isn't even that hard. You just get an NASUS and you can just get, you can hit a MALPHITE or an ALISTAR and you have 4 mascot, which is actually pretty strong. Something like this. 4 mascot, 2 heart. It's also a very, very common opener. And you can transition really easily to any AP comp. That's it for the 2 cost units. Let's move on to the 3 cost units. The reason I'm going over 3 cost units is because a lot of times you will get these 3 costs from orbs and you will keep them and play around them. And you will definitely see 3 cost units in your shops in stage 2. So ALISTAR. Usually when I get ALISTAR from orb or something, I'm rarely playing ALISTAR. He's a little bit too expensive. He is a mascot, so there is value there. Oxforce. He is also an Oxforce, so you can pair it with like other Oxforce units and get 2 Oxforce. But there's a lot of other cheaper Oxforce alternatives. FIORA, Annie, and Talon are cheaper Oxforce alternatives, so you don't need to hit ALISTAR. There's also a lot of cheaper mascot alternatives. You know, MALPHITE, GALIO, NASUS. So that's why you don't need to play ALISTAR for mascot. Next up, we have CHO'GATH. CHO'GATH is a threat unit, so CHO'GATH can go into every single comp. CHO'GATH is a frontline unit that also mana reaves, so he has some value there. But there are other better units you can play with CHO'GATH. Like, you'd rather have like upgraded brawlers or upgraded defenders in a CHO'GATH, right? But you know, if you have nothing to play, like threats, if you have nothing to play, you can just splash in a CHO'GATH. There's a value in that. Jax, getting Jax from orb. Jax is a little bit expensive, but he is a brawler, so he has some value there. Pair it with any other brawlers. If you have an item like BT, you do want to keep the Jax more. Also, if you hit a Jax, it's easier to hit Mecha Prime. So definitely look out for the Wukong, and then definitely look out for the Draven. And you can maybe play Mecha Prime Jax in stage 2, and it's really, really hard to kill. Next up, we have Kai'Sa. Kai'Sa is really, really strong, one of the strongest units in early game. So if you get a Kai'Sa from orb, I would definitely keep Kai'Sa. It's really, really easy to you can just play traitless Kai'Sa and it's really strong. You can also easily get in recon with ASHE and EZREAL and VAYNE. Star Guardian also benefits Kai'Sa pretty well. Look out for the RELL and look out for like maybe like a Lux or something to get 3 Star Guardian. The unit that you really want to look out for is going to be NILAH, because NILAH is a Star Guardian and also she's a tank. So because Kai'Sa is a backline unit, you want to have more tanks. You don't really want to play the Lux for Star Guardian. So definitely looking for the NILAH. And if you can somehow hit a VAYNE as well, this is like the Wet Dream like Kai'Sa opener. You have the VAYNE to give you a recon, and you get duelist with NILAH, and you can just play a random Star Guardian, and then maybe like play a defender here like Poppy, and then it's like a really, really good opener. Kai'Sa holds attack speed items really well, so like Ginsu, she can also hold AP items like Archangel or like you know, GS, whatever. Besides like these, you can even play Kai'Sa with no traits easily, right? You can just play a Kai'Sa and then play with frontline units like BLITZCRANK, RENEKTON. Play Kai'Sa plus Brawler, it's really strong. You can play Kai'Sa plus like mascots, it's really strong. So once you have Kai'Sa orb, just look to get some tanks going. Next up, we have LeBlanc. LeBlanc is also really, really strong AP item holder early game. She's also a 3 trait, so she's a spell slinger. You can get the spell slinger you want to look for is probably Annie, because Annie is a tank. You get the 2 spell slinger in. You also want to get the admin in, get BLITZCRANK in, so then you can get the admin really easily, and BLITZCRANK is a good unit. Play a brawler with BLITZCRANK, something like that. In order to get hacker in though, you do need to hit Zoe, and it's actually very rare, but if you do hit a Zoe, you can start sending LeBlanc into the backline. Next up, we have NILAH. NILAH is actually pretty strong, I feel like. NILAH is like a really, really good tank early game. Basically, if you're playing around a duelist and you need a tank, NILAH is perfect. Let's say you have a KAYLE too. You definitely want to play the NILAH, because NILAH is a tank and it gives you duelist. Let's say you have like a VAYNE. You want to look up for the NILAH, and NILAH also helps you get 4 duelists really well. Get the FIORA plus GP in, 4 duelist in, really, really good. Also opens up Star Guardian, so you can if you're playing around a Lux, you can definitely play NILAH frontline as a NILAH frontline, and then you can just play like a YUUMI, something like this. Next up, we have RAMMUS. RAMMUS is a threat similar to CHO'GATH. You can play it's a threat frontliner. You can play RAMMUS in like every single comp, except RAMMUS is like way better than CHO'GATH. RAMMUS has like 60 passive armor, so that's insane for stage 2. He also has CC, he also lowers 80. So RAMMUS is everything. If you get a RAMMUS from orb, I would definitely want to keep the RAMMUS, and then just play some backliners with RAMMUS, and you'll be really strong. Riven is really, really strong early game because of her traits. It's a brawler and a defender, so you can get it. You can just put in 1 brawler and get 2 brawlers. You can play 4 brawlers really easily. You can play like brawler plus defender, and then Riven also opens up the anima squad tree, because it's actually a good unit to play with the anima squad. You don't have to play like a shitty SYLAS. You play like a JINX here plus like a VAYNE or a NASUS. So if you get a Riven from orb, I would definitely look to keep it. SENNA, if you get a SENNA from orb, definitely look for the SIVIR. It's the only way you can get 2 sure shot in, and SENNA can also give you laser core, right? So the laser core unit early game is going to be RENEKTON plus YASUO, and then you play a brawler with RENEKTON. Very, very common opener. 3 laser core, 2 sure shot. If you don't hit the YASUO, you can also play ASHE. But since you already have backline with SENNA, YASUO is infinitely better. Next up, we have SONA. If you get a SONA from orb, definitely look to play on 2 on underground, right? Because if you hit a SONA, all you need to hit for underground is going to be KAYLE, EZREAL, or Vi. So once you hit Sona, it's gonna be infinitely easier to get 3 underground in early game. So if your opener sucks and you want to econ up or whatever, and you get a Sona, don't sell it. Try to go for underground. It's also 3 traits. Also gives you Spellslinger and Heart. So if you want to play around Heart, you can definitely also play keep the Sona. Like let's say you have like a Lulu 2, keep the Sona to get Heart. Play a Lee Sin, play a Yumi. You can actually get 4 Heart in. And then Sona is also Spellslinger, so you can play around. You can also play 4 Spellslinger with Lux. Take out the Lee Sin, play Annie, and then play a LeBlanc for 4 Spellslinger. So Sona is actually pretty good if you're going AP or if you want to play underground. Next up we have VAYNE. VAYNE is pretty strong. It's also a 3 trait, pretty strong duelist / recon early game. So if you're playing around duelists and you need some backline damage, definitely keep the VAYNE. If you just have like an upgraded frontline like Blitz or Renekton, definitely want to keep the VAYNE for backline damage. Probably one of the best backline duelists early game. And you just slam some AD attack speed items on VAYNE. That's be pretty good. VAYNE also is Anima Squad. So if you want to play towards an Anima Squad line, keep the VAYNE. It's really easy to get in that Anima Squad with NASUS, SYLAS, or JINX. And then JINX can hold your AP items, VAYNE can hold your AD items, and you can play whatever you want. Next up, we have VEL'KOZ. VEL'KOZ is a threat backline unit, except VEL'KOZ kind of is like a support unit because VEL'KOZ stuns your the enemy carry. But if you put AP items on VEL'KOZ, she can actually like one-shot the enemy carries if they're 1-star, something like that. So if you're lacking damage or if you want some CC, definitely just keep the VEL'KOZ and play it in. Like let's say you have a GALIO and a NASUS too, and you're missing some backliners, you get a VEL'KOZ from Orb. And your shop is all tanks. You know, you can keep the VEL'KOZ over the tanks. Next up, we have Zoe. Zoe is a 3 trait gadgeting hacker prankster. Really good. If you get Zoe from Orb and you have AP items, definitely look to keep Zoe. Opens up the gadgeting tree very easily with Poppy, Annie, and Lulu. And then you can also get the prankster tree in very easily by just hitting JINX. And then if you do hit a LeBlanc, you can also play around hacker. So Zoe is actually really good. If you have AD items though, it's actually you probably just don't keep the Zoe because the tree that Zoe opens up is gonna be like mostly AP, Gadgeting, Spellslinger. And that's it for the 1, 2, and 3 cost units. Hopefully, you kind of know, depending on what unit you're playing around and what items you have, you kind of know what other units to prio. Next up, we're gonna be going over. I'm gonna be including this imager in this video. Basically, I have some sample early game boards that you can look at. Like this is like a civilian mascot opener. Solid random board with no minimum traits, Gadgeting opener, Laser Core opener, Mecha Prime Jax opener. I'll include this in the video. You can just kind of look at it. And that's it for my early mid-game guide for set 8. Hopefully you guys learned something about the openers this game. These things are going to change. Like after patches, like maybe mascots gets nerfed and defenders are more broken, meta changes and stuff. So, tier lists can obviously shift, but the openers and what units are going to be pairing around the certain units are going to be the same the entire set. So get a hang of what units go well with what units, and then hopefully this will help your early and mid game to help you transition to your late game. That's it for the video. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.